Yeah, so we might start slowly. First, by a short introduction to you, Friedman. So you're joining us for the seventh module of the Cluster Management Training Series of the Clusters4Health project. Friedman, you're Innovation Manager at BioRN, the Life Science Innovation Cluster in the Heidelberg region in Germany. You are actually quite or known to quite a few people in our consortium, but for those who don't know you, you started your career in academic research in genome engineering and immuno-oncology, I read, both working in Germany and in France during your postdoc. And in 2019, you embarked on the cluster life, if I can say that, helping to grow a 180 member life science ecosystem at BioRN, which is one of Germany's strongest biotech and life science hubs. Today, you will share your experience with us on business development in a cluster organization, and we are very much looking forward to that. So welcome, Friedman, and the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Marine. Very happy to be here. So I will share my screen. Up. There we go. And I will put this as well in presentation mode. So everybody should be seeing my slides now. So yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation, and very happy to be here, and also very happy to see that also from other projects there's some kind of cross connections and cross acquaintances. Is always nice to, as I said, meet each other in different contexts. So today I'll be talking about the business development in a cluster organization, which is, yeah, I mean, you will see that we do this in a quite informal way, so nothing highly specialized, but I think it might be still an interesting discussion. And yeah, as Marine already pointed out, I'm working for BioRN in southwestern Germany, and I will start with an introduction about our cluster, because I think this is also relevant for you to understand a little bit my train of thought, you know, when I put together this presentation, thinking about how you can actually describe or put cluster development, business development in a cluster into words. Okay, so I start out with a very quick overview, you know, BioRN in a nutshell. So we are a non-profit association, and we want to foster health innovations. I think one of the, let's say, unique selling points that we really have is that we are at the interface between academia and industry in a region where there's lots of excellent academic research and several big pharmaceutical companies. So yeah, this is, as Marine already said, also why the region is one of Germany's strongest biotech hubs, and why we like to call ourselves as well a science and industry innovation cluster, to kind of name this kind of special thing that we have. So here now you can actually see a map. So you see that Heidelberg is in southwestern Germany, pretty close to the French border, and also Switzerland and Belgium and Luxembourg are not far away. In this circle, you can actually see maybe the three main cities that are in our region: Mannheim, Heidelberg, and Frankfurt. Frankfurt, maybe you know from the big airport. And on the left side here of the circle, you see the excellent research institutes that we have. And probably you're not familiar with all, but maybe the German Cancer Research Center. You know, it's in Heidelberg. The European Molecular Biology Laboratories, EMBL, is also in Heidelberg. Of course, we have a huge and renowned University of Heidelberg. There's a Max Planck Institute as well here, Max Planck Institute for Medical Research, and several Fraunhofer institutes, which are a bit more like technology industry relationship kind of academic centers as well. And then on the right-hand side, you see those large multinational corporations that have significant research and development activities in the region. So it's not just like a subsidiary that is doing sales, let's say, but they're really doing research here. So you have GSK in Heidelberg itself. Merck is then in Darmstadt, like a half an hour car drive up north. Sanofi is in Frankfurt. You have AbbVie in Ludwigshafen, like 20 minutes away, as well as Roche. And then in Rhineland-Pfalz recently, Eli Lilly also is now opening a new center, so to say. And then, of course, in Ludwigshafen, you have BASF, the huge German, mostly chemistry giant that also has a biotech division, actually. And then AGC Biologics and a bit less known, but still a big CDMO, Thermo Fisher. They're all really in the region. And on top here, we have other big corporations, which are kind of part of our cluster as members, but are not directly located in our region, but they still find our region interesting enough to pay for a membership. So to continue a little bit with the key figures about our cluster, yeah, I think this is, everybody puts up his or her own numbers. But what I want to point out here is mostly that it's really very dense. So Heidelberg is a pretty small city, it's like 150,000 inhabitants, really small. And still you have an enormous amount of life science or biotech related students, employees, in both academic institutes, but also in general in companies. And yeah, as I already pointed out, we have 15 leading research institutes in the region. And yeah, these numbers here you can actually see. So like 10% of the population in Heidelberg are actually scientific employees, and another 10% are students in the life sciences. So 20% of the population of Heidelberg are actually really working in our sector, which makes it very dense if you compare it to other regions or clusters or cities. And then on the bottom part, the industry part, so yeah, 7 big pharma companies that I mentioned, and about 1,200 smaller and medium-sized companies in the region, of course, make a very, very dense and rich structure for us. I continue a little bit with our history, just to give you a quick overview. So we were actually founded 30 years ago, so it's our 30th anniversary this year. Sad to say I'm older than BON, but still BON is old enough. We were founded as winners of a federal German initiative for bioregions. So it was a federal grant, national grant in Germany that kind of established and founded BON. Back in the days, the idea was already that you have funds from government matched by industry, one-to-one. And with this, initially, the idea was to, in general, start a biotech ecosystem, let's say, because it was a bit the time also of the first biotech companies, and then later on, you can maybe say also the first biotech bubble. But that was the time. So then about 12 years later, we won another national grant, the Leading Edge Cluster competition, which then again brought 40 million euros of national money and 40 million euros of industry money into the region, mostly in this case for projects that would result in startups to kind of nurture this a bit. We continued in the 2010er years with becoming more international. So we founded the Health Access Europe with Cambridge, Copenhagen, and Leuven. We were involved in the kick for EIT Health, which then led also to the establishment of the EIT Health Catapult, which is a training and business plan competition program for young companies, which is now running in its 10th year, so very successful. And yeah, in 2019, actually, when I joined BioRN, we just hit the 100 members threshold, which was, of course, a great success. And since then, we have been mostly busy in establishing translational projects, so to kind of support academic research to become a product or to reach the clinic, depending on what the product would be, So, and for that, in particular, we were involved in establishing Evotech Bridge, BLab 2122 in Heidelberg, which is essentially a 20 million euro pot of money which is used to advance academic drug development projects to a point where you can found a company or license out in essence, but so to an inflection point where you can actually make money with it. The second part was Biolabs Heidelberg, which is an incubator, like fully equipped labs to do wet lab work for biotechs to really advance their science and not have to care about how to dispose of their garbage or how to order their kits. So this was also established after we kind of had an initiative here to see what we would need. And the third thing is that we were also involved in a regional fund, venture capital fund that was set up by the region, where we kind of try to talk a lot to the legislators and tell them that these and those changes would be needed to make this program also attractive for biotech companies, young biotech companies, because as you know, the sector is a very specific one, where typically development times are long, very costly, and very risky. So the kind of model this regional venture capital fund had to be changed a little bit to make it also amenable for our, so to say, companies. But yeah, and by now we, Marie mentioned it already, so you did your research, very good. We reached the 180 member threshold, so we have been constantly growing, and this is of course very nice for us to see that our work and our community is appreciated. So here you see a list of all the logos, but I also want to go a little bit more into detail into what the different members are actually doing. So we have about half of our members are actual biotech, medtech, or digital health companies, small and medium sized. So in terms of percentage, this is the largest proportion. But of course, if you look at research institutes with 8% and pharma companies with 6%, the percentage is small, but in terms of employees, they are, of course, a very, very, very important stakeholder for us as well. As I mentioned, or also in the beginning, they are kind of our unique selling point here in the region. And then the remaining categories kind of are distributed between professional consulting. Many times they are relatively small companies, sometimes independent consultants that still want to be part of the network. We have a few companies that are more active in the engineering space, but always related to life science aspects of it. And then, of course, we also have public authorities and investors as members, not that many investors, but the regional public authorities like the city of Mannheim, the city of Heidelberg, the larger region around Heidelberg, they are kind of also members because they're very interested, of course, as well in the sector and in our work. Then an important aspect that will also come up later again, this is why I'm mentioning this here, is or are our boards. So here you can see our executive board, because we use the boards as a tool for many things. So my boss, Julia Schaft, she probably has a very good hand for these things, and she's really able to steer them and to make them help us and support the team. So they're not just a group of people that meet once a year to have a nice dinner in a fancy restaurant, but they're very actively involved in our actual work. And that's very valuable because they, as you can see here, they represent really the diverse kind of stakeholders that we have. So from big pharma, big universities, and medium-sized biotech companies to startups. We have one investor in there from the high-tech, the German high-tech founders fund. And then, of course, also regional, more government type of stakeholders like the city of Heidelberg. So they're all involved here. So they kind of represent different aspects of the value chain or different aspects, and they have a different view on different things. And it's very important to regularly talk with them and get their feedback and give them our ideas and see what they think about it. So this is our executive board. With them, of course, we're mostly involved, but we also have a strategic advisory board. They give strategic advice. Surprise, surprise. So they support us if we want to push our executive board a little bit. We can kind of use them. So these people tell our executive board what they think the executive board should approve. And we also have a scientific advisory board, which gives scientific advice, specifically, for example, to choose the topic for our annual conference, which always has a scientific focus, but also to evaluate, for example, applications for awards that we give out or prizes that we give out. So those we use kind of for these scientific like questions. Okay, but what is Byron actually doing, or what we want to do? And I think this is also very important for the later part, which is more directly focused on the business development aspects, is our mission. So, and the mission is to develop the region into a world-leading life science cluster, attracting international investments and top global talent. So this is really what we as Byron want to do and reach. And this is, of course, later on the basis for how we kind of develop both our fields of activity, as you can see here, and what I later on call our fields of business. And the fields of activity are relatively common, I think, for different clusters. We do networking and stakeholder bridging. I will give a bit more details about this later on. Promotion and visibility, we do, of course. Advocacy, you can also call it lobbying if you want. And translational support. So what we also do together with the executive board, every 2 to 3 years, we kind of have a more specific focus for the common years. And these years, starting this year, it's actually startup support, which is very much focused on financing, on training for entrepreneurship, and also for changing the laws. So the framework that exists in Germany regarding technology transfer, because this is one of the main hurdles here for us. And then a second part is a regional settlement concept, because we want to have even more good companies in our region. I mean, this is, of course, nothing very specific, but for these 2 years, we have decided to focus on this. To quickly go through networking and stakeholder engagement, this is, of course, involving our board, as I told you before. We have several networking events, which is a very essential part of many clusters and also of our cluster. We do support people in finding partners. So if somebody writes to us and say, yeah, we're looking for somebody doing like this, we try to find someone. We also offer, for example, through this group here, or through CBAR, the Council of European Bioregions, or through PreciseEU, or through our general contacts into other regions and to other life science clusters. We offer also an access to more international network, and we want to also function as a central point of contact if you have any kind of inquiries. So here you just quickly see the kind of events that we actually have. We have our annual conference, the Live, once a year. We have Smart Labs, which is a lab automation conference. And then we have a Life Science Investors Day. So it's very strictly for venture capital companies and biotechs that pitch for them. We have an Industry Academia Day, which is kind of an earlier step where we have academic group leaders presenting their research, which should have a very direct relationship or direct connection to industry applications already. We have lounges, which are very general and informal, pizza, beer kind of networking events. We have M2M, member-to-member sessions, which are members presenting themselves toward the other members. And then we have meetings of the C-level people. This is for them an interesting kind of way of exchanging with other C-level people. And depending on what is hot on the moment and what is asked for by our members, we also have special interest events. And with this, I mean, for example, a circle of people that talk about sustainability in lab work, because this is a topic in a company. Or what I mentioned earlier, the investment circle that then led to the kind of establishment, let's say, or the modification of the regional venture capital fund. This was a special interest group that met. They were interested in investing in biotech companies, and we were thinking in this group, how can we change this? What do we need to do? And then we went to the regional government to tell them what they should change to be also helpful for biotech companies. Exactly. Then promotion and visibility. Yeah, this is a classical thing that clusters do, of course. We highlight regional success stories, member success stories. We represent our region. You know, I'm here, I'm talking about our region. I go to conference, we talk about our regions. And what we're also trying to do is to attract high-profile events to our region. So last year, for example, the German biotechnology days, they were in Heidelberg. It's not always easy because Heidelberg is a small city and we lack a little bit the venues to attract even larger events, but we're working on it, let's say. Advocacy, of course, is something that in recent years we have been doing a little bit more. So we're really trying to actively go to politicians that have an interest in biotech and tell them what we think might have to change, both on regional and national level. And for example, some people from PreciseU have heard that the week before last, we were in Brussels as well at the European Parliament. So we also try to lobby on this level through PreciseU in this particular case. And then the last field of activity is translational support, which for us is very important. So in here I put now a little bit the kind of things that we do on an everyday basis, so to say. So I'm in the lead actually for our innovation scouting. This is what I'm doing mostly. So I identify interesting assets or projects or research all across Europe, actually, not just in the region, for medium-sized and bigger pharma companies. And I do this on a really fee-for-service basis. We do soft lensing, you know, to help companies, innovative companies coming to the region to arrive. We have the think tank on investment that I was mentioning already, and we have several low-key startup support programs, which is mostly directing them to the right people, giving them an initial overview, organizing office hours with big pharma companies so they can already test a little bit their idea with specialists from companies. Okay, so now I talked a lot, actually too long. I'm sorry about this, about our cluster, but I think it's also important to understand a little bit what I will now tell you about the business development, you know, to change gears a little bit. Because you need to understand, I think, a little bit how our cluster works. And I hope I gave you an overview now. Great. So then I will come here to the second part, because it was also very interesting for me, of course, to prepare this a bit, because as I mentioned initially, in principle, we have approached this in a pretty informal way. So I had to think a little bit about it as well. So that was good. So, you know, I just started kind of by going to Wikipedia and have a look at what is business development actually. And there it's written, business development entails tasks and processes to develop and implement growth opportunities within and between business organizations. Okay, so what do I actually make out of this? I went back to the very essential point that I also kind of, let's see if anybody remembers what is actually our mission. So our mission is to develop the region into a world-leading life science cluster, attracting international investments and top global talent. So this is kind of the basic, the baseline that you need to be sure about if you want to think what is the business development actually for, you know. We are, as clusters, we are not normal organizations that just have a product and need to somehow get a bigger market share. But it's similar in some aspects, you know. And yeah, so what do you, why do we exist then in the long term? It's in principle to strengthen the life science ecosystem here. And what do you need to do that? I think this is also not very, it's not the greatest idea of all times, but we need is money and we need influence. So these are the two things that we actually need to do what we want to reach in our mission. And of course, the money, you just need to do what we would think works to reach this mission. So you needed to pay people, you needed maybe to go to conferences, you needed to buy a computer, you needed to buy a software that might help you, as I will later tell you. So you need that. And of course, you need influence, basically, for everything that money cannot really buy, or where you know that your funds will anyway never be big enough. Because, of course, that's also something that can... So, for example, the examples with B Lab 2122 that I gave you before, it's a 20 euro fund. Of course, we will never have that money. but we could use our influence, we could use our connections to make somebody else put money in that pot. And same for biolabs. It was essentially a real estate project, so we cannot build a lab building with our funds, and we will never have enough money to do that. But we could convince the city of Heidelberg that it's really worthwhile doing that. And they built a building and reserved it for biolabs as an incubator for at least some time. So I think that is really important to have in mind. And what do you actually need to get there? So for the money part, you have to think, where are you actually your revenue streams? And for us, these are very clearly membership fees, services, and grants. So 50% membership fees, 25% services, 25% grants. And in terms of influence, how do you get influence? And here, this is a bit more vague, I think, but for me, just to randomly put down some points, for me, it's knowing people, having good relationship with those people, and you get these good relationships with people because you help them. And if you do this for some time, you will get influence through these people. And now to put this kind of in fields of business for which you then can actually do business development, I thought about this and I put it down like this. So we have members, this is one of our fields of business, so to say. This is our product, if you want, one of our products. So you can, and they are a source of income. They're good for influence. You get to know people. Services as well, they're a source of income, and you know new people that maybe before you did not know. And grants as well, source of income, and you know new people. So again, with the influence, it's a bit more vague. But strategic partnerships, I thought about it, and I think strategic partnerships are one way as well of getting influence, but it's difficult. You can use it for knowing people, and through these partnerships, you might also help some of your stakeholders. In general, also a vaguer term, relationship management, which essentially means you have to have good relationship with these stakeholders and do business development for that. And an important part of this is, as I mentioned as well before, supporting these stakeholders, because if they feel like you help them, they're always happy. And in our case, and I think in many cases, it's two things. It's funding and finding partners. All right, this was now a little bit more abstract, but I will now go through these different fields of business and try to explain them a little bit more in detail and more concretely what we're actually doing in terms of business development. So the first part of our business model are the members. And for this, what we actually do, we approach organizations pretty actively if we think they fit. So we are, as you could see, we're again in a comfortable situation. We don't really need, let's say, super quickly more members. So we can be a bit picky there, and we now really strategically think who is missing, who do we need, and we approach those people. And we do this also using our board or our boards, because they are people with great networks, with influence. So it's really helpful to make them also be part of the effort, and they feel more involved in the cluster, in the daily cluster work, and it's really helpful. So, don't forget this aspect. Yeah, and what's, of course, again, a complete no-brainer, you have to be somehow visible, be it in your region, through social media, through general media, but you have to be visible. So, but here, what I see, or what I'm missing a little bit is, so you have to keep in mind what you're actually doing this for. So, because if you say, I'm doing business development to attract members, it might be something quite different from something else. So in this particular case, if you're just having messages that you go here, you go there, like, we do this as well, I don't think that you will particularly attract any kind of new members. What they are interested in. They have to see in this kind of media presence you have the advantages they might have from becoming a part of the network, of becoming a member. And I mean, this is a theme that will also come back later, but I think this is something, it's not easy, but it's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, very essential also of this, the media presence in your region should not be through yourself, but it's even better if members or other stakeholders are talking well about you. You know, this is also something that will come back later. So kind of have testimonials about your work, about what you do, about your community, and that's also very helpful and maybe much more powerful than you yourself writing the 20th time how great you are. So this is one part, attracting new members, but in a sense, I also had this part here as part of the business development for members, because keeping those members is also very essential and not always easy. Because now we have about more than 180 members, and of course they have different interests, different people. They ask you for completely different things all the time. So it's not really easy to manage this. So for this, I think one extremely important part, and I really see this as almost our main business development asset in this aspect, is to record interactions. So you can do this, of course, in many different ways. We're actually using a customer relationship management system, a CRM. And this is really, I think, very important, because like this, you really know your stakeholders, your members, and you also have a way of making or helping other people in the team to know them. So what you can see here from the screenshot, okay, this is now about me, but you can see on the left-hand side, for example, a colleague of mine that has an upcoming meeting with Friedemann Loos would be able to see the emails that have been exchanged with him. They would see what kind of appointments you had with him. They would see to what kind of events he went. In this Dokumentenakte on the right bottom, you see there is notes about meetings with him. So, you know, for a colleague of mine, it would be interesting to understand what the interests of this Friedemann Loos are. And this is for us, and you know, you don't have to, I mean, this is of course a bit more costly and a bit more complicated to have such a system in place, and you don't need this, but you need to have some kind of way, I think, to make the knowledge about people and about what they're interested in common knowledge within the team, you know. So very important. So then what we also always do is we have a very strict expectation management from the start. We don't try to promise things we cannot hold, which I think at times when we were also financially a little bit more, let's say, restricted, it was of course more difficult because you need new members as a source of income. But in the long term, the people that you just promise things, they just leave, you know, after 1 year, and they realize you cannot deliver. Then we always have onboarding meetings with new members. It's also important. So we have a different team member, talk with them like 45 minutes or an hour, and really go through all the things we do, we don't do, and also ask them what they're actually interested in, to understand also from a different angle than maybe the first point of contact, what their interests are, and what they're actually interested in, why they join a cluster, what they want to get out of it. And the last point I have here is key persons. Yeah. It's very important. You all know that there's different people in organizations, and there will always be one that is more interested in working with you than another one. And if you have a person that is interested in working with you, you know, you have to nurture them also a little bit and be nice to them, help them when they need something from you. And along the same lines, these people, they might also change. So it's always very important to also have them have handovers if introduce a new person if they change their role. So we always try to have several people in an organization that we know well, and at the same time always have introductions to new people if they come in and take over roles that one of our old champions kind of had. So here, very clear aspects: search the new ones, but also keep the old ones. So With this, we come to the services. And here we have essentially, we do four things. So we do innovation scouting for pharmas and biotechs. We have a soft landing service, an internationalization service, and little event organization services, how I put it here. So the last one is a little bit opportunistic. You know, if somebody tells us here, can you do this for us? And we give you some money, we might say, depending on if we have time or we owe them a favor or whatever, we say yes or no. So this is not really very structured, but the innovation scouting especially is really kind of a structured service that we're doing. And to come back to Carmen's interest before, so it's for us, it's relatively clear, focused on drug development, because this is what we know and what I know. And if a big pharma or biotech comes to us and says, you know, we're interested in this kind of disease and in these kind of drug modalities, we search in whatever geography they want, Germany or Europe as well as a whole. We search for fitting companies, academic groups, assets. So essentially, it's a white glove service, whatever they want. Yeah, so this is a bit the service we have for Carmen. What we need to do for this is, again, a list of things. So this is our business development here. Like with the members, you have to have clients talk about you. You need testimonials. I think this is always a very strong thing. In this particular case, you need to go to conferences, and I think they need to be the right conferences. So for the scouting service, to focus a little bit on that, because it's the thing I know best, it's partnering conferences, because there you have the scouts from the big companies. So we try to go to these companies. We do network or media partnerships if we cannot pay for the conferences, and we try to kind of like this sneak in, get access to the partnering tools they offer, and find out who these people are, and generate new leads if you want. So this is how we do this. And again, of course, social media presence, but here it's a different kind of social media presence, because of course you need to position yourself as somebody who can do the service. So here now it's not about showcasing what kind of advantage a member might have if they join us, but here me myself as a lead in this service, I have to position myself as somebody that knows what he's doing. So it's a different kind of social media presence you want here. I mentioned this before as well, when we were talking about how many people we have. I think for all kinds of services, it's very important to have specialized people. And this is not always easy, especially in small teams. And you have to be careful really to not stretch yourself. So this is also essentially of the four services I write down here. The one we are really doing is the first one, the first line, the scouting. Because any kind of service you offer, you need to be aware that it requires full commitment. You will not be able to just do here and there a little bit, and people will be happy and will come back to you as returning clients, so to say. This will not happen. It is a full commitment, so you have to think very carefully about if and what kind of service you can and you want to offer. Yeah, so this is about the services. So I continue to the next section here, which was grants. So here is again, also we can of course argue a little bit from a comfortable position, because I think it's important to have a general idea also which grants you actually want. So sometimes you need also to opportunistically apply for something because you have a funding gap upcoming, you know, it's clear, but still, if you can, it's not bad to think about it and pick the grants that are actually benefit your organization as a whole. So, you know, that fits well with what you do, and that then in the long run, you can say it benefits your mission again. So for example, you know, it's also okay if you're happy to do project management in a research and innovation action type project. But of course, in the end, you will get money for this, but in the end, you will just fund, which can be useful, one person in your team that is doing this project management. But the question is really, in the end, will you have some outputs that you can actually kind of give to your community, to your stakeholders? Do you, I mean, it can be that you get to know very interesting researchers that do the research in that project. So there might be things, but you have to think about it a little bit. And again, here, what we do is, in terms of business development, if you want to call it like this, we have a dedicated person that is responsible for finding and orchestrating, let's say, grant applications. So she's not doing this full time, of course, but we have a responsibility in the team. So just giving the responsibility, I think, is a good thing. And this can be, depending on your size, the boss of the entire team or somebody else. So we have one person that is supposed to look regularly in the forums on the web pages where you have calls published. And that's important. And the second part is, of course, to be involved in structures like CBAR, the Council of European Bioregions, or similar ones. I mean, there's similar things, of course, as well. It's very important because this is just a forum where, on an informal way, I don't know, I'm in a WhatsApp group and people ask, so, we have seen this upcoming call about repurposing of drugs. And then this is something I can directly work with, or we can work with, and say, okay, repurposing is at the moment a hot topic for us or not, whatever. So I think these are the two important aspects here. So these three things here were about the money part, so the revenue stream. So very direct business development in a sense for our products as a cluster. So now I come to the influence part, which for me was much more vague. And I'm also happy to have a discussion later on about this. And it's really not as concrete in terms of what you can do. So strategic partnerships, I mean, they're important, I think, but I really did not know what to make out of it. So I think it's very specific. It's very case by case. And I would really not know how to approach this in terms of a more structured way. I think, again, it's important to keep your mission in mind and always think about, does it make sense? Does it have a benefit for us as a whole? And I mean, you could for sure very actively think about which strategic partnerships you need and what purpose you have, and then go for what purpose they might have, and then go for it and try to get it. But I think I would guess it's pretty resource intensive. So we really do this on a very opportunistic fashion. So if we have the feeling we are working so much together now with the German Cancer Research Center and we would like to have this in writing, we have such a strategic partnership with them in place, but in the end, what is the benefit? I don't know. So if somebody has a great idea here, I'm happy to hear that. So also the relationship management is in the end, it's exactly the same as for members. So they might not be members, but you still also thinking in a wider circle about other stakeholders. You can just do the same things that you do for members, for important people or organizations which are not yet members or which are not yet so much involved in your network. And that will certainly benefit you a lot. So you can do exactly the same thing, proactively think about whom to approach, how to treat them, help them, and that will be a very good way for that. And then the last point here was supporting stakeholders. And I think for this maybe goes a little bit back to this CRM that I talked about earlier. You need to know what your stakeholders want and what they need. So, and I mean, in the end, it's often quite easy. So this is why we kind of just picked funding and partners because they will for sure need that as a thing, and it's always the same. But there might be other things as well. So you need to know what they want. So we have had times then some people were looking actively for lab space, So then if we wanted to make this a concrete thing, we would need to look for lab space. But what we do is we kind of now focus on these things. So and for the funding, especially, we have a very clear set of formats to serve this. So we have the Life Science Investors Day for matching really VC VCs, venture capital firms, and biotech startups. We have a private investor day, which is similar, but trying more to attract rich people to also invest as angels into biotech companies, because many times, of course, because it's a different business and it works differently, they're a little bit reluctant to invest and it's high risk, but still we try to make it a little bit more attractive for them like this. And we have the investment circle that I talked about before as well, to kind of see it through and find new ways of getting financing into our region and how to support startups or young companies in our region. And so these are kind of the activities we thought about and did to very actively do business development, so to say, to support our stakeholders. And for partners, it's a little bit the same. So we started out with this scouting service, which of course is a little bit different because it's really on a fee-for-service basis. But still, the idea initially was that. And we have this kind of policy that if somebody needs a partner, we discuss it in the team, we brainstorm about it, and then write two or three potential matches, let's say. So like this, we really think that we can support stakeholders or potential stakeholders. Yeah, so I have a last kind of slide here about to recap a little bit the business development tools that we were using. And I think the first one, the CRM, the customer relationship management system, which we use in this version, but there are many other ones. There are cheaper ones, there are more expensive ones. You can also just use a doc file or Excel files, sheets. It doesn't really matter, but I think you need to find a good way of organizing yourself in this aspect. Then conferences. And the right conference is just not just any conference, and use network partnerships if you cannot afford to go to these conferences otherwise, and use the partnering tools from these conferences to find new leads, maybe in a very business development or sales like fashion. The boards, very, very important resource, we think, which many clusters that we know or we see use very little. And I think you can use them better. I mean, there will always be some that then are super annoyed because they have to do more. But like this, you can separate the good ones from the not good ones. And you will be able to really also have a board that supports you and is very useful for you. Social media. It's a no-brainer again. You have to do this, but think about how you can tailor this really more to what your actual fields of business are. Yeah, I think this is very important because otherwise it's not useful. And then you have as a last point, and I mentioned this for services, but also for members, to have testimonials. So it's really the most important thing. If your members or your clients talk well about you, be it on social media, or they give you a testimonial like this one you can put on the webpage, it's valuable. This is gives you credibility. And don't make them up because people might ask. Okay, so as a little take home, I think very important, first of all, you have to know your mission. From that, you kind of need to know your fields of business, so what you're actually doing, for which kind of activities or fields of activity you can actually do business development. And then the four most useful things: conferences, use CRM or similar, use the stakeholders, the boards, the clients, to kind of also do the work that you might not be doing because you're only 7 people. And use media in general, and social media, of course, in particular. And with this, I'm done. And also I have a little bit more time in case there's still questions, because I pushed the other meeting half an hour back. So that worked.